all aboard. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all fans of all ages, I am Beast Mikey. You've now arrived in my train of thought. It's time to talk about week number 10. I can't believe we're already here, but we're at week number 10 when it comes to this NFL season. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get to business. So, I would argue that the Bengals and Ravens have probably played two of the 7 or 8 best games of the 24 NFL season. We saw round one happen in Cincinnati, where it was a banger pretty much from the word go. Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson went bar for bar. They both made incredible plays. Ultimately, it was a field goal that separated them. Who would have thought that week 2 would be even closer? It would take a little bit, but it would be even closer than the field goal in question. It was great play by the defenses, which is saying something because both defenses are bad, in the first half, and then Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson went to work in the second half, and both parties cooked. Jamar Chase was also amazing. It was probably the best player on the field for either team. And we get to the end of the game, and then we get to the obvious 3 penalties that Baltimore committed, but none of them actually happened. Well, at least none of them were called. On the game winning what could have been 2-point conversion for Cincinnati. I think the most egregious probably was Burrow's roughing the passer when there was obvious helmet contact. But the Gesicki hold was very, very questionably uncalled. I could have lived without the other one not being called, that you could argue pass interference. I think that's bang bang. But the Gesicki one absolutely was the one I thought that was going to be called that surprisingly wasn't. Baltimore, you escaped, and you might have also ended Cincinnati's season simultaneously. It's a big win for the Ravens considering what's coming next for them. I'll talk about that tomorrow. So who is the ultimate zombie in the NFC? The reigning, defending, undisputed champion Carolina Panthers were defending their title over in Germany against the New York Giants. And what we got was classic zombie battling. We got very catastrophic turnovers. We got some really dumb and crazy plays that happened for both teams. We got a whole lot of unfortunate injuries, and we also got some decent play from guys that you wouldn't probably expect it from. I'd argue that the 3 best players on the field in this game were Brian Burns, Zion Tracy, and Chuba Hubbard. Hubbard actually just getting paid by the Panthers last week. And there were points where Bryce Young looked pretty good, and there were points where Daniel Jones didn't look self-destructive. To be fair to Jones, the NO he threw to Josie Jewell was more about Josie Jewell saying, I am taking the ball away from the New York Giants and you're going to like it. He almost did it a couple of plays earlier, and then succeeded with the NO that basically cost the Giants at least 3 and potentially 7 points. Malik Neighbors not being all that great was a little surprising. Xavier Legette being pretty good was not surprising. He's been at least better lately. Ultimately, we get to overtime because what's a good Zombo without extra fun when the Giants get it first? And naturally, because Giants, they drop the magic beam because we got rules against that, even for the rookies. Tracy fumbles, Panthers recover, and Carolina doesn't even go 3 plays without winning the game at the very end with a walk-off field goal. So we have a winner and new zombie champion of the world, at least in the NFC, the New York Football Giants. As for Carolina, you're getting a winning streak, which is not a sentence I thought I'd say in 2024. Who knew? Good job, Panthers. I'm proud of you. So Carolina is making a play to try to leave zombie tier. It looks like New England's trying to leave zombie tier too. And this was not a fluke what happened in Chicago. They were the better team. They absolutely ate Chicago's offensive line alive. 8 or 9 sacks or so. This is right after they traded Josh Uche, by the way. That's also really bad looking for Caleb Williams and company. And some of this is on Caleb because he holds the ball too long and tries too hard to make a big play. But yikes, this is really bad. And the fact that Chicago could only get 3 measly points against a Patriots team that is not very good or very high-end talented, that is a really alarming performance for a team in the Bears who have been really alarming over the last few weeks. Drake May, let's face it, has outplayed Caleb Williams for the last 3 or so weeks and definitely outplayed him in this game. Is it on the board to think that Caleb Williams is currently the 4th best quarterback in this rookie class? It very well might be. And that's saying something because J.J. McCarthy probably would be playing at a decent clip with the Vikings, considering the roster around him, if he were healthy enough to do it. New England's not going to the playoffs, but at the very least, there's some promise with New England. As for the Bears, this could get worse considering their schedule. I'll probably mention that tomorrow in the power rankings. Your current zombie kings in the NFL are the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have held this throne for 2 of the last 4 years and are making a very strong play to hold it again. This was an awful game with them and the Vikings. The weather was too, and Minnesota truly didn't play down to their competition. Why, do you ask? Well, Sam Darnold is slowly and surely reverting back to his New York Jet form. The New York Jet form was awful to look at if you were a Jets fan. It was awfully entertaining to look at if you weren't. There were NOs thrown, 3 of them actually, for Darnold. There were NOs and turnovers by Mac Jones, 2 of them, 3 of them, Jaguar-wise, if you were looking at this game. And if you were looking at this game, I would imagine you need your vision checked. This game was pretty ugly, and this game featured a lot of field goals by the Vikings and a touchdown by the Jaguars, ironically by Mac Jones, but not much else that you could really say was actually good. Minnesota, take your win and run, and do not look back. Like, seriously, just get in the car, or get on the plane, or get on the train, however it is you got to Jacksonville and Duval County. Do not come back, just take the win and run. It was ugly, but we'll never have to speak of it again after tomorrow. Maybe we should have seen this coming, but we're blinded by the icy Kirk chains, or how good Kyle Pitts looked last week, or how good Drake London has been all year, or maybe the fact that the Falcons seem to get out of their own way and look productive as a team as opposed to look like crumbling like graham crackers. Yet Thanos taught us a very valuable lesson. Dread it, run from it, destiny arrives all the same. And Atlanta's destiny is to falcon. This time, it's expectations they falconed with. They found a way to play disastrously bad against a Saints team that hadn't played any sort of good in the last 2 months. They found a way for Derek Carr to shred their defense like he was peak Derek Carr. They found a way to do nothing on offense. They found a way to miss 3 kicks. Well, really, Younghoe Koo did, and he wasn't the only kicker to do that this past week. And they found a way to lose a game that we, who have watched NFL football over the years, and when it comes to the Falcons, we probably shouldn't have been surprised that they lost this game. And yet they did. And I think we're all frustrated because Atlanta lost. Because we thought that Atlanta had turned the page, then cured themselves of the falconing. As it turns out, they have not. And they still got some falconing left in their system. It's a shame, too, because Atlanta really might have blown any sort of opportunity they had at the 2 seed because of other teams in this conference that are catching them and passing them as we speak. One of those teams will not be the Bucs, it would seem. A lot of things happened here. We got Ricky Pearsall playing pretty well. We got missed kicks by Jake Moody, Deebo Samuel trying to punch Moody out or have some words with him. Either way you want to describe it. Both things could be true. You got Tampa Bay's offense getting back in gear somewhat. You've got a productive and incredible last drive and really play by Baker to fight off a sack from Nick Bosa on a gotta-have-it 4th down. You also got a touchdown from George Kittle, but Kittle will generally do that a lot. And you got the 4th down conversion by Baker to help set up the field goal that tied the game. And unfortunately for Tampa Bay, you gave the Niners too much time. Brock Purdy was able to get down the field. He didn't trip on himself or make mistakes, ultimately getting that game-winning field goal from Moody, who redeemed himself and got the kick that he needed to get. The Niners needed this win badly to keep up in an NFC West that is very serious, and NFC as a whole that is incredibly competitive this year. There's a lot of depth in that conference. For Tampa, yes, this loss is going to hurt, and it's going to hurt a little bit more because you could have gained a game on the Falcons, but that division was probably not happening anyway. But at least your schedule down the stretch is incredibly easy, and one of which that you should navigate rather efficiently. A tale of 2 seasons. In the case of the Bills, they're trying to stack wins and potentially get to the 1 or the 2 seed. and then go from there. In the case of the Colts, they're trying to save their season and figure out what to do at quarterback. I don't think the Colts still have an answer for that. Joe Flacco out the gate threw a pick six to Tyrion Johnson, and it felt like Indy never really had a shot from that point on. This is despite Jonathan Taylor playing pretty well. This is despite a couple of turnovers from Josh Allen, who is slowly and surely perhaps reverting back to his 2023 form. He had avoided that for the first half of the year. But again, even with all of that happening and some okay performances, James Cook actually did play a pretty respectable game, it never really felt like the Colts had a shot to win this game. And that's probably the way it should have been, because Buffalo is the superior team here. Indy is now back in the mosh pit with the rest of the mediocre to below average teams in the AFC fighting for a playoff spot. Buffalo is obviously on the fast track towards a higher seed because the AFC East so far has not been good. Things happened as they should have. So this was probably as close to a loss as Kansas City could have had since the actual last loss they actually had. Let's face it. Sure, the Ravens game ended with the Isaiah Likely touchdown being overturned, and then at which point Kansas City would have either had to deal with a two-point conversion or game tied go to overtime. I can't even say the Tampa Bay game would have been closer, because Kansas City got the ball and Baker never saw it again. Maybe you could say the Bengals game, who definitely got the benefit of the doubt the Chiefs did, with the lack of holding being seen and the pass interference, which was the right call, definitely being seen. Maybe that's the closest. But even then, Kansas City still had to do the necessary work to get Harrison Butker a chance. This wasn't any of that. This was Denver had them. Denver had them on the ropes. Denver had them pinned. This was over and done with. All Will Lutz had to do was do what he's been doing. Make a 35-yard kick, and Denver can get out of this game with the W. Bo Nix outplayed Mahomes. Denver's defense was excellent. For the most part, this was fait accompli. Until it wasn't. Until Kansas City was able to outsmart Denver. Until Kansas City's preparation and execution both met at success, and they all went out and had a very good time. This was until the Broncos didn't seal off the left side of their line and got absolutely bulldozed for the block kick to happen. All of this now sets Denver right back down the mountain when it comes to beating the Chiefs, and Kansas City survives, advances, and will run away with this win. That is the difference of holding your blocks and getting a kick blocked. What a devastating loss for the Broncos, and probably a soul-stealing one considering Kansas City is their greatest stop. Buffalo, Kansas City. You already know I'm going to talk about that one tomorrow. The main event of the 1 o'clock games absolutely lived up to the hype. Steelers, Commanders was a very entertaining game. It was unfortunate that Brian Robinson couldn't play in it, but Austin Eckler did his part, and did his part well, even scoring a touchdown. The Steelers had some very weird special teams events happen. The fake punt decision deep in their own territory was not a great one. The muff punt wasn't that great. The fumble at the 1 was even worse. It looks all of a sudden like the Steelers are going to lose. The Commanders felt like the better team. Things were looking good for Washington. All the Commanders had to do was stop Russell Wilson one final time, and they would have the win. They did not stop Russell Wilson one final time. But it wasn't for lack of trying. They had things in hand at a decent rate until Wilson throws up a moon ball and puts it where only his guy could get it. His guy being Mike Williams, who just got there, possibly off the bus, and scores the go-ahead touchdown with not too much time left. Great work by the Steelers to make this happen. Great work by Russell Wilson to get this touchdown into Mike Williams, to go with a really gorgeous touchdown catch by George Pickens, and the Steelers find a way to survive and draw the Commanders offsides at the end to get this W and send their fans home happy, or at least the fans that made the trip to FedEx Field. It's still FedEx Field to me. Good win for the Steelers. They needed it because their next opponent will be very serious, and a game I will very much talk about tomorrow. How to describe the 4 o'clock games that were in this window? Well, there were only 3 of them. None of them were any good. All of them were blowouts. Let's talk about the Eagles and Cowboys first, I suppose. And the good news is for Dallas, Micah Parsons and DeMario Overshown looks like a really good pass rush combo. Micah returned, and he looked excellent. We got pretty good performances from Trayvon Diggs, who got the NO, and Brandon Aubrey, who made kicks, because of course they did what they were supposed to do. Unfortunately, not really anyone else showed up for the Cowboys. The offense wasn't good. None of the defense otherwise was too much of any good. Cooper Rush did not look like he was ready to go in this game. And the Eagles, all they had to do was not make too many mistakes, and they'd be fine. They did not make too many mistakes. The turnovers aside, there were a couple early in this game for the Eagles. The Eagles were relatively fine. The Zeke fumble inside the Eagles' 10 was a killer, though. And so was CeeDee Lamb, unable to see a wide-open touchdown coming because of the sun being in his eyes. That was very bright light in second quarters of late games for the Cowboys. Anyway, this was an Eagles win that was necessary and that we kind of saw coming now that Dak's out for the year. And the Eagles now keep up with and now pass the Commanders for the first place spot in the NFC East. This game will be talked about tomorrow. For the Jets and Cardinals game, let's see how to describe what happened in the desert. There were tackles missed, most of them by the Jets, it seemed. There were points scored, definitely more so by the Cardinals. There were people who were frustrated, that was probably Jets fans, and there were people who were very happy, that would definitely be Cardinals fans. This was a beating, and probably a beating that a lot of people should have seen coming. Arizona is coming in with a lot of momentum. Arizona showed that, and James Conner, and especially Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray and Trey McBride. McBride was breaking tackles all over the place. In fact, the one with Sauce was effectively the game changer, and it was a permanent game changer. The Jets never recovered from Sauce Gardner not getting that tackle on McBride on third down when they had to have it. They didn't get it, and it led to a touchdown moments later, and it led to basically this game being over and the Jets' season effectively being over. For Arizona, they are probably, and I would say easily, the most surprising first-place team in the league this year. But then again, we shouldn't be so surprised considering this team got 5 wins last year by just being grittier and tougher than some of the teams they played. Good job, Arizona. With exceptions to some early shenanigans, this Titans-Chargers game was pretty self-explanatory. Not a lot of chaos after, I would say, probably midway through the second quarter. From then on, it was all Chargers. They were Chargering early on with some turnovers, some mistakes on offense and special teams, but once they got their footing and learned to cover Calvin Ridley, they were generally okay. The defense got home and is suddenly one of the best defenses in the game. Will Levis didn't cause a meme, though. We were all disappointed and all kind of excluded from watching legendary meme status by the Mayo guy. But other than that, it was a pretty straightforward beatdown by the Chargers, who are really, really worthy of a playoff spot. It's just a matter of which one they're going to get at this point. From a game that was easy and simplistic and efficient and straightforward to a game that was anything but. Think trying to drive on the Autobahn, but all the roads are slippery and icy, and there are boulders coming everywhere. The rock slides are real. It is absolutely insane to think about what happened in this game. So, let's talk about what happened in this game. Drive by drive. We got Detroit, who got the ball first. Ino, Houston, Tutty, punt Lions, field goal Texans, touchdown Lions, field goal by Texans. Okay, straightforward start so far. And then we get a little crazier. Ino by the Lions, so let's go off second one. Field goal. 3 straight punts, touchdown Texans, Ino Lions, but at least that's a Hail Mary, so we excuse that one. It's halftime. Houston's up by 2 scores. Dan Campbell's getting interviewed right out of the half. He wants a turnover. He needs a turnover. Before the interview is over, he gets that turnover. Ino by CJ Stroud. And Detroit promptly does the following with that inno. They throw it back. No diddy. This was not a great look for Jared Goff. This was not a great night. But at the very least, the Lions defense holds and they get the punt. And then a touchdown by the offense. Good. CJ Stroud throws another inno. Good. For Detroit. Bad for Detroit would be the next drive, which ended in, you guessed it, an inno by Jared Goff. 3 straight punts and then a Lions touchdown. And then another punt by Houston and a field goal that was made by the Lions. So cool. We are tied at 23 in one of the most insane games of the year. Houston gets the ball next, and now it's a matter of, okay, Stroud's thrown some innos, he's made some mistakes. The Lions have been able to get home a few times because the Houston offensive line is pretty bad and getting progressively worse. And all Houston now has to do is make a field goal and get the lead back. They did not. So now Detroit gets the ball, good field possession, and they can burn a lot of the time off to win the game and get the field goal and get out of Houston with maybe the ugliest win of the season by a good team against a good team, but they'll take it. That's exactly what happened. Kick was barely made, but the kick was made all the same. Good win for the Lions. They escaped this game with the dub. As for Houston, yikes, what a ugly 2 weeks. And I would say they're in trouble, but the AFC South is not a good division, Houston aside. You're going to get the 4 seed and you're going to like it, Texans. Now back to a relatively straightforward game. The Dolphins-Rams game was pretty easy in practicality. There were a couple of chaotic events, of course, but that's every football game except for the last one I just talked about. The Dolphins immediately got off the bus up 7-0. They went down the field with relative ease. Tua was finding some wide open receivers, one of which being Jalen Waddle on a critical 3rd down, and they kept it moving from the go. Quick 3 and out, got them the ball back, and then the Rams defense said, all right, that's enough of that. We're going to stop the Dolphins' movements for a lot of the first half going forward. They did that. There were also some turnovers there, and a situation where on back-to-back plays, there was an interception thrown by Tua, and a really dumb and crazy dumb decision by him to try to make the tackle by diving towards the offender's knee. That was not great, but he was okay, which is a good sign. The very next play, Kyren Williams fumbled, so it's like the end almost never happened. Not great. Miami then fumbled it back a few plays later, and the turnovers were 2-2 because there was an earlier inno by the Rams that set up a Dolphins field goal. So this was a bit of a weird, wonky second quarter, I would say, but all in all, the Dolphins were the better team in the first half. They were also the better team in the second half and came out swinging in said second half. Starting it after the Rams missed a field goal, and this was after they had made the kick, and they got called for a false start, and then the kick that actually counted was shanked very heavily to the right. Dolphins fans are wishing that happened against the Bills, but we ain't talking about that right now. What we are talking about is how the Dolphins responded after that. Another good Dolphins drive to start the second half. A touchdown to Tyreek Hill after a great Jonnu Smith play to get them down to the 1. And a ridiculous celebration by Tyreek Hill and Odell Beckham with a double clothesline. As a wrestling fan, I appreciate this. Anyway, this would be the last touchdown of the game, which is good for the Dolphins and not good for the Rams because the Rams didn't have any to begin with. They would not score a touchdown. There would, however, be field goals. Several of them. 5 to be exact. 3 of them hit by the Rams. The Dolphins' last one effectively put the game out of reach, and they were up 11 with 5 minutes left or so. The Rams did get a field goal to try to make it a one-score game after blowing an opportunity to add a touchdown because Kyren Williams was wide open on the 3rd down. And then Sean McVay decided, okay, we're going to take the 3 and then take our chances with the onside kick. They did not get the onside kick because only the Ravens are allowed to give up onside kicks. Anyway, this is a good win for the Dolphins and a win that Miami sorely needed to try to save their season. The Dolphins were the better team, and that's a sentence I could definitely say over the last month, but only this time were they rewarded for it. So LA has become the final stop of this train of thought. Another strong week of picks. I went 11-3, and my overall record is 97-56 through 10 weeks. Coming up tomorrow, power rankings. We've already seen Carolina is making a move upward. How high will they get? Also, the title tier teams are really starting to take shape. There are some really good games coming up this week, and I'm going to talk about all of them. With that in mind, Jacksonville, you're going to be the first stop of my next train of thought.